Hello, this is Shan Chandrasekhar welcoming you to another delightful part of our programming. As part of our tribute to 100 years of Indian cinema, we featured some of the finest of motion picture stars, producers, directors, music directors, playback singers, and behind-the-scene talent. We are very delighted and honored to present an outstanding actor. She's, internationally well known. She's a great model. She was, by the way, Miss Universe. In addition to that, she's a goodwill ambassador to the United Nations, none other than your favorite and the most beautiful, Lara Dutta.
चिल्लाओ मत। मेरे साथ इतना बड़ा धोखा। शो का चीफ गेस्ट है, शायद आपको पता हो।
और मैं अपनी जिंदगी अपने तरीके से जी सकती हूँ, हाँ भाई साहब, if you don't mind।
तेजी, ये मिस्टर गैरी है।
Wow, what an impressive background and an accomplishment.
Thank
we are
you.
honored to have you.
You're very kind. Thank you very much.
Did you have a pleasant flight?
I did. I had a very long flight, but it was an excellent flight.
That's wonderful. As you know, we're doing a tribute to Indian cinema.
Yes.
First of all, you're a pride to our country, Miss Universe, and you look as good as ever, by the way. The day you walked on that ramp, can't tell the difference much.
Well, a few pounds
Oh,
heavier.
not really. Let's just go back to that before you entered the film industry, that
Sure.
period there.
Yes.
The day you became Miss Universe, before that you were already Femina Miss India.
Yes.
And in fact, we covered that live as well because we had the exclusive rights for Femina as well in those days. So tell me about what went through your mind the day you were crowned.
Well, Shan, you're asking me to go back, for me, a long time. It's almost, if I have to look at it, it's going to be 20 years next year. That's almost half my life.
It looks like it just happened a couple of years ago.
But, for me, as a 20-year-old, when I won Miss India, I had the Times of India group that had asked me for a very long time to come in and participate. In fact, from the time I was 17 years old, I was still in school, and they were very keen. So they would scout for talent within the country for girls who would represent India. And they were very keen that I took part in the Femina Miss India contest. And my mother was very, very clear. She said, so my mum never got her degree. And so she was very clear saying that I want to make sure that my daughters get their degree. So she said to me, you do whatever you want in life, but you do it once you've got your degree under your belt.
Fantastic. You did economics and communication.
I did. Can you imagine? I did a BA in economics, and I don't know what I ended up doing with that BA, because that ended up being, a piece of paper that went into a drawer. But for my mum, I think that was very important that I got that degree. So I actually was contemplating entering Miss India in the year 1999, and then into my head popped a thought that said, I just feel that the Millennium's Miss Universe has a better ring to it than Miss Universe 1999. And this is even before I entered Miss India. Mm-hmm. So I was very, very determined and absolutely clear that for me, the final achievement was not really just winning Miss India, but actually winning Miss Universe. So I withdrew my application in 1999 and put it back in again in the year 2000.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So that I will forever in my life hold the prestige and the honor of being the Millennium's Miss Universe. But, that said and done, no matter how focused you are, at 20 years old, it's an extremely daunting task to have the hopes of almost 1 billion people, on you. I think it was very stressful. It was a tremendous amount of responsibility to actually go in and represent India in Cyprus in 2000. But of course, it's a life-changing moment, and a lot has happened in my life over the last 20 years, a lot of other achievements. But that will always be, I think, for me, one of the greatest achievements of my life.
What made you decide to enter the film industry? Because if I remember, one of your earliest interviews, you had actually said, I really don't want to explore the film industry opportunity.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you changed your mind, because you made a tremendous mark in the film industry, which we will go through, okay?
Yes.
But tell me about that transition period.
My dad was in the Indian Air Force, and we're 3 generations of pilots.
Wow.
So my grandfather used to fly for what today is BA, British Airways. But at that point of time, there was no partition between India and Pakistan, so it was all Hindustan, and my grandfather was born in what is now present-day Lahore. But he was also a pilot with BOAC, which was what the airline was in those those days.
British overseas.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Right.
And my father joined the Indian Air Force, as young as, straight out of the National Defense Academy. And so all that he really ever knew to do was to fly, helicopters. He's fought 3 wars for India. He's a multi-medal award winner. And then, of course, my sister was the first batch of women helicopter pilots in the Indian Air Force.
Wow.
So for us, we were definitely never a filmy family. No ambitions whatsoever, to go into show business at all. We were a purely military family, and that was in our blood, and that's what we did. So I never grew up with any aspirations, and especially growing up in the South, because I did most of my schooling and my college in Bangalore. So also growing up in the South, it doesn't have, access to so many Hindi movies and things like that. All that those days you got to see was the Sunday movie, on Doordarshan that was presented, and then Chitrahar on Wednesdays.
Right, right.
So that was our exposure.
Otherwise, it was all in Kannada.
Yeah, it was all in Kannada, and also we were 3 sisters, and with my father working, there were never any. We never grew up with the luxury or the frivolities of going to the movies every weekends and things like that. And if there was a chance to go to a movie, then my father would take us to go and see movies like Lawrence of Arabia and Gone with the Wind,
Wow.
and so those are the kind of things that we grew up with.
Right.
So Bollywood, as a sense, was never part of our lives, and I always thought, even as a child growing up, I had very lofty aspirations, and I never focused on any one thing, because I always thought that I would be a master at all of them, So when I grew up, I wanted to be an astronaut, an archaeologist,
Wow.
and a ballerina. So it was always one of 3 things.
Wow.
But I think as I got older, something that really my role models, I would say, and something that really caught my attention was journalism. And I always thought that I wanted to be, so Christiane Amanpour, when I was actually competing for Miss Universe, at that point of time, she was one of my biggest inspirations.
Wow. For CNN.
Exactly.
Right.
And she was, I think, a pioneer in her times. For
Right.
the first time, a woman was out there in the field. The news was hard hitting. It was in your living room. She
Right.
brought the wars in.
Yeah.
She gave you the real story.
Yeah.
And that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I was which is why I was studying economics and communications.
I'm glad you didn't do that.
No, but so that was where my interest, kind of lay. Yeah. But of course, when you win something like Miss Universe, and you come back to your own country,
right.
there are very few avenues that kind of provide you with the same, whether it's the same sort of glamorous, lifestyle, or whether it is the same scope or, magnanimity of things. And the 2 things were either you went into politics or you went into cinema.
I'm glad you didn't go
exactly.
into politics.
So I'm more glad that I didn't go into politics than journalism, because I think I would have been a terrible politician in India. I don't think I have that mindset. But so films it was. And obviously after you win something like Miss India and Miss Universe, you have a lot of producers that kind of, come knocking.
You're tremendously noticed.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was, I think, at that point of time, a very easy transition to make. Obviously, I had no idea whether I could even act, whether I would be able to fit into an industry that I didn't know anything about. I would be lying if I said even if I knew a little about, I didn't know anything about it. So I literally had to learn from scratch.
No, but you're very modest. Don't forget, you're one of your earliest films, Andaaz. You won the Filmfare Award. Yeah. And the Filmfare Award in India is considered like the Oscars of Indian cinema.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
So I think for me, I've always been interested in theatre. I've always done theatre ever since I was a child as well. So could I act? Yes, I knew that. But could I act for what the Hindi film screen demands was a different story. And I think I got extremely, extremely lucky with my first film, where I had a producer like, Sunil Darshan. I had a wonderful director, the late Raj Kambar. And then, of course, I had today who is, I consider my friend, philosopher and guide in the business, as my first co-star, which was Akshay Kumar. Yeah. Just to have that environment around you where you felt protected, you did not feel exploited in any which way, and people who kind of looked out for you, So even Akshay has always been extremely, sort of protective. Both Priyanka and I were coming in, right at the same time. He saw 2 young girls coming in with, stars in their eyes and zero guidance and direction.
Real lucky. Okay.
Yeah, reality.
And he never took advantage of that, So today, I think he's such an incredibly street smart person, that he knows the business like the back of his hand. He knows what works. So in that sense, I had a really strong, kind of a springboard to take off from.
Yeah.
And then, of course, slowly you learn. I think it's God's greatest blessing, to have work. B, to be in the kind of position for the amount of people that come to Mumbai with millions of people that come with dreams in their eyes to make it big in Bollywood, to actually be given the opportunity. Those are things that you have, they're sacrosanct. You know, those are things that you don't take for granted. Those are things that you work triply hard towards in order to make those dreams come true.
Absolutely.
बड़े धूमधाम से होगी तू चल जिया
Then, you know, you moved on to, I think it was a film called Khaki.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
So Khaki actually came to me, Rajkumar Santoshi ji reached out to me saying, you know, will you come into the office? We're doing this film. You know, it's got a big star cast. There's Aishwarya, there's Bachchan Saab, there's, you know, Akshay that are part of it. And so when I walked in, I was like, so you've got all of these big major stars. What am I doing in this movie? And he said, I want you to be in this song. And I was like, what? I'm going to be an item girl? And he was like, no, just hear the song. I was sitting in his office. He said, hear the song and then tell me what you think and, you know, let me know. So he played this song that was composed by Sampath and it was Aisa Jadoo Dala Re. And I heard it and I was like, wow, this is an amazing song.
Yeah.
And it was, for its time, it was, you know, a kind of it was almost like an anthem because it was, though it was meant to be in the song where it was like treated like an item number and, you know, whatever, but it still had an energy to it that was beyond just being a sort of a raunchy, you know, sort of an item number.
Sure.
And he was very clear saying to me, even the performance in it, Lara, I just wanted to be, in terms of energy, I wanted to be something like nobody's ever seen on screen before.
Right. Yeah.
And I ended up being part of Aisa Jadoo Dala Re, and that song, you know, catapulted me. That, I think, apart from Andaaz, was the one song that literally made me a household name across the globe.
Masti was another one. That was a box office hit, from what I understand.
So to be very honest, Chan, I found that coming from a glamorous industry, coming from a modeling world, and then of course coming with the baggage of being Miss Universe, when you come into the industry, a lot of times people see you only as a glamorous face. You know, you're kind of slotted. Ye fashion industry se hai. So the kind of roles that she should be given, the way that she should be presented all the time, should be extremely glamorous.
Typecasting.
You know, exactly. And after a point of time, I got bored going into a meeting. What am I being offered? You know, in this, there, it's 6 scenes, 4 songs. You're playing X and Y's love interest. You're playing, you know, so-and-so's wife, whatever the actors or the big stars, you know, love interest and wife. And there was very little to do beyond that. And I also found that most of the time, the producer would call me in because he needed a extremely glamorous face, you know. And I got tired of it. So in fact, when Masti came my way, though even, again, the depiction of the character in that movie is quite glamorous, it gave me a chance to be part of the comic genre of film.
मेरी प्लान के मुताबिक वो अपना दिल हार बैठा.
And what really changed my career graph in my life is when I did No Entry. I played a character called Kajal, who was a very suspicious Punjabi wife. In the film No Entry. And in fact, when that film, when Anis ji offered me the film, he came to me and he said, there are 2 characters, you choose what you want to play.
That's with Anil Kapoor and Salman Khan.
With Anil, Salman and Fardeen. So he offered me the role of that Bipasha ended up playing, you know, which was the femme fatale, the very glamorous, the other woman. He said, oh, the other one is this very suspicious Punjabi wife and whatever. And I immediately said, I want to play the suspicious Punjabi wife. So in doing comedy, which I have to be, I won't sound so humble in saying, but I will just say it, is because at that point of time, there were not a lot of actresses that could actually do comedy. You know, you had an era of Madhuri ji and Sridevi ji and Juhi Chawla, who were all these incredible actresses when it came to performing comedy on screen. But at the time that when I was there, you know, they were on their way out and there was nobody else. So I kind of found a way for myself to be able to transcend that glamorous image, to be able to connect with an audience, to do something that I loved, and it gave me a chance to be myself, to be goofy on screen, not having to look like a beauty queen all the time, and you know, I could actually have an opportunity to perform. And No Entry changed my life, and after that I went on to do, I mean, essentially, if you look at my career, most of the films that I've done, and I've worked with the best comic, you know, directors, from David Dhawanji to Anis Bazmi to Priyadarshan, you know, all of them. But that became my forte.
शादी कब की? अभी का मतलब?
Then we moved on to Dosti.
Yes. Dosti was, of course, coming back and teaming up again with Sunil Darshanji as a producer. and had two of my favorite co-stars, Akshay and Bobby. It was the first time that I was working with Kareena, and it felt like coming home. And the story as well resonated with a very family sort of an audience. And being on sets like that really is like coming, to a picnic every day, because it's people that are like family to you. It's showing up, doing what you love. It's a big blessing.
We talked about different heroes. You've acted with all the top heroes of Indian cinema. There was a film with Shah Rukh Khan that you had actually danced with Shah Rukh.
Yes. Phir milenge chalte chalte, which was,
Right,
of course.
right.
When Yash Chopra ji picks up the phone and calls you and says, Lara Butta, aa jao, milte hain, chai peete. It's... how many people can lay claim to that,
Right, right.
So I loved Yash ji. In fact, I traveled with him on a flight, very, very long Air India flight from Mumbai to Atlantic City. We were going for an award function, and that flight was over 18 hours delayed.
Wow.
14 hours of that, we sat on the tarmac.
Right.
And it was hot. You can imagine, no air conditioning. All that they served us was water and peanuts for 14 hours.
Yeah.
And the one person that never complained through any of it was Yash Chopra ji.
Wow.
He sat there and he said, okay, this is it, what it is, chalo गाना गाते हैं, अच्छा तुम्हारे इसमें क्या है, तुम कुछ खाने ले आए हो, चलो निकाल लो, And it was for me such a lesson to learn in humility and in learning that, life is going to throw many things your way. You've got to make lemonade from all the lemons that come.
Wow.
And so for me, he was like, I think within the industry, one of the biggest aspirations, one of the biggest examples, to kind of emulate and to follow.
Absolutely.
And it was so nice. Every time you went into Yashraj Studios, and Yashji would be there. Even if he didn't have a meeting with you, if he saw you sitting in the, in the atrium or something like that, he would say, "Arey Lara, aa gaye ho. Chalo chole bhature khate hain. Aaj cafeteria mein na samosa bane hain." And he loved that. That was his personality, you know. So he never made you feel that you were sitting in front of the Yash Chopra ji, and he just had this warmth in him. So to do Phir Milenge Chalte Chalte was a tribute also to older actresses and music that had come, specific songs. So I was coming in and I was doing a tribute to Helen G.
Yes, that was fabulous, by the way.
Yeah, and it was incredible because the rest of the actresses that were part of it, of course, were Rani and Kajol, and so it was so much fun to do something like that. And to have an opportunity of working with Shah Rukh, who then I also worked with when we did Dawn 2.
Right.
And, kind of worked up. And I worked with him as a producer when we did a wonderful film that I consider a lovely one in my career, which is Billu.
Of course,
So Billu Babar. So,
with Priyadarshan.
With Priyadarshan.
Right.
And had Irfan, Shah Rukh and myself.
There was another big box office hit that became a super hit with you and Salman,
Yes,
Partner. What a film it was, and it grossed millions of dollars. So tell me about that venture.
So Partner for me was very special on many counts. For the first time, I had an opportunity of working with David Dhawan, who I, really admired. I mean, I would always watch his movies with Govinda and say, my God, how does he make these movies? Like, how does he even think of them, you know? Second was that the person I was pitted against was Salman, who... for whatever, Salman, Shah Rukh, Amir, the Holy Trinity,
right.
And it's the first time that I was working with him. In doing that film, I found a buddy, a friend, and I think with Salman, he's very clear about his likes and his dislikes. He either really likes you or he just does not like you at all, So I'm very, very thankful that I got onto the right side of him and became somebody that he actually got along with and liked. And I think we shared a chemistry that was very special on screen. So that kind of worked for that film because we enjoyed playing off each other.
Right.
So there was a lot of Masti that actually happened on that set.
Yeah.
And then of course, I always call him, I say he's the god of acting, which is Govinda, who would come onto set, read a scene, rehearse it with us, and then when the take happened, he would completely improvise everything and change it up. So for us as an actor, for me, I had to really be present in every scene because I didn't know what he was going to throw at me.
Right.
So you have to be able to pick it up and, throw it back in.
Right.
And it was incredible because I had the opportunity of then working with Govinda. We worked on a film with Ravi Chopra ji, which unfortunately never got released, but we did Banda Ye Bindas Hai. We did another film with David Dhawan called Do Not Disturb.
Yeah, I remember that film. It's Do Not Disturb is KNOT.
Yes.
I remember that. You are a fantastic dancer. And there are some numbers that you have done and they became extremely popular, because I do remember in one of the segments in the past that you spoke about Tripataka, Artapataka, Kattari Mukha, something like that.
Yes.
So which means you had some classical training.
Yes.
So tell me about it.
So, we've spoken about the fact that I grew up in Bangalore. So I grew up in the South.
Right.
And in Bangalore, like all good South Indian children, well, I'm not South Indian, but I might as well be because I've spent so many of my years there. This classical Bharatanatyam training is a very, very unavoidable, integrable part of your childhood.
Right.
So I had, a Bharatanatyam sir who would come every Saturday, Sunday and Wednesdays on his moped with that tal wala, beating wala stick. And it went on for a good 2 hours, much to the dismay of all the neighbors around.
Right.
And I started from the time I was about maybe 5 years old.
Right.
So by the time I was like 13, 14, I had done my Arangetam and done all of that.
Wow.
And we had...
so you did Alaripu and...
Yeah, I did. Well, I did essentially Bharatanatyam and Mohiniyattam.
Oh, Mohiniyattam as well.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
And then when I moved to Mumbai, I was about 17 years old when I moved to Mumbai. And, Bharatanatyam, I felt that I wanted to do something differently. So I actually started studying Kathak while I was in... while I lived in Mumbai.
Right.
And I learned the Lucknow Banaras Gharana, Teen Tal, Sola Matra, all of that.
Wow.
And, and I loved dancing, so it was just, and like I said, with my parents as well, my mother is, my grandparents, my grandmother is half German, half British, my grandfather's half Swedish, half Scottish.
Wow.
So my mother came from a very Anglo-Saxon background. My dad, of course, is Punjabi. But also again, being in the Air Force, they have, he grew up on music with Frank Sinatra and, Engelbert Humperdinck, all of that. That was the kind of music that played in our house. So I always grew up watching my parents waltzing and, jiving and things like that. So dance was very, very much part of our lives.
This is incredible because of the fact that you've had national exposure in India, north, south, east, west, which is terrific. How much of this, and earlier in the interview, I remember you being very modest and you said, I got my degree, but I don't know how useful it is. Obviously, in my opinion, I think all these have put together has given you tremendous confidence to proceed with whatever you're doing.
Yes.
Tell me about your education, your upbringing, and your artistic training in dance. How did that help you in your Bollywood career?
Well, like I said, I think the sum of your life experiences, kind of amalgamate to make you who you are.
Right.
And it's all very well, and like I said, I'm very fortunate and very, very blessed to be in the position that I occupy and have the opportunities that I've had in my life.
Right.
But I also think that from quite a young age, I've always been very curious to know what life really is all about. You might achieve a lot, but at the end of the day, what does that amount to? And I think from the background that I've had, the kind of parenting that I've had, the kind of secular upbringing I've had, because I grew up in a household that was both Hindu and Catholic and Christian. With great and immense respect, my father was a byproduct of the partition. Again, he was born in present day, sort of Karachi. Of course, had to leave when he was 7 years old. Moved to India. So we grew up with a view that was quite, I would say, personal to the kind of background of the family that I came from. And I've really realized quite early in life that it is the person that you are and the experiences that you create for yourself, the choices that you make, that really give you that sense of contentment and satisfaction in life. Also, again, from my background of dance, I was in a tight-fitting red gown. So when he said, "Can you show us a few steps?" It's disrespectful to the dance form itself. And I'm not a performing monkey, to be really honest.
Absolutely,
So and the dance that we're talking about has an immense tradition and culture, and everything that it comes from. It has to be given the dignity of. So I think in the position that I was in, the easiest thing that I could do, or the most sensible thing to me at that point of time, it felt, was to show some hand mudras, and and that's that's what I did.
You were so graceful, and and hats off to you. Lara, that you had another film called Blue, but there is an interesting story behind it from what I heard,
Yes.
because that's the first time you actually had to learn to swim and you went underwater.
Yes.
So you did deep sea diving. That was quite an experience for you.
They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I'd beg to disagree. So I was 30 years old when Blue was being planned. And a little bit of backstory, when we were talking about Andaaz, which was my debut film,
Right.
we filmed some part of it in Cape Town, South Africa. And we had a song sequence that we were shooting.
Right.
And we were placed, Akshay and I were placed on a boat. We were taken out to these rocks that
Right.
were a little bit into the ocean.
Right.
And Raji was on the beach with, this long kind of tele-lens camera.
Right.
And there was one line in the song, and the waves were supposed to break over us,
Right.
and then this line had to be sung.
Right.
And of course, the ocean currents were so strong and the waves were so big that when the wave broke over the rock, it swept Akshay and me out into the sea.
Wow.
And we were quite far away so that nobody could actually get to us to kind of give us a hand. And I went underwater.
My God.
And I didn't know how to swim.
My God.
So I was wearing leather and I sank like a rock. And Akshay literally has dived underwater, and the current was so strong that we were being swept out rather rapidly.
My God.
So he's grabbed hold of me, kind of pulled me out of the water, brought me onto the beach, and I actually went into hypothermic shock. So it became quite a big incident that actually took place on
My
the
God.
set. Obviously, shooting had to be packed up for the day.
Wow.
I was rushed to the hospital. Kind of all of that happened.
Very serious.
Cut to a couple of years later, my phone rings. Akshay Paji is on the line. The usual, Paji kya kar rahi hai? I said, whatever, nothing, life's going on, it's all tickety boo, all great. अच्छा सुन, तू एक पिक्चर कर ले. हाँ, yeah, sure. इसमें ना हम दोनों diving जाएंगे. So my first thing was, Akshay, of all the people you have called, if anybody knows, you know that I can't swim. हाँ तो ठीक है ना, 6 महीने हैं, सीख ले. सीख लूँ? At 30 to learn to swim? Yeah. See, I'm getting you a coach. You first learn to swim, see if you can manage it, and then you can do it. और कोई नहीं करेगा. So I said, हाँ, ये बड़ी अच्छी बात है. This is really great. Okay, no other actress is going to allow you to put her at, 20, 30 meters under the water to do a film.
Yeah.
तो तुम्हें एक ही मिली,
Yeah.
which was Lara.
Yeah.
क्योंकि I'm pagal enough to do anything that's thrown at me as a challenge. But that's what we did. I learned to swim. I certified as a diver. So I'm now a certified diver,
Wow.
CMAS. And 6 months later, we were in the Bahamas shooting Blue.
Wow.
And spent almost 30 days underwater at a depth of about between 24 to 30 meters. And it was one of the most incredible work experiences in my life.
It was a huge, very expensive production.
Very expensive.
And you had these speed boats and everything there, and plus, of course, underwater photography was fantastic.
Yes.
You were swimming, and and there were some scenes with some sharks around.
Yes.
Oh wow! So you weren't scared?
Scared, yes, but I think I was more excited than I was scared. So I think the excitement kind of overrode, any kind of fear that you felt. And of course, the fear was there, when I started to learn to swim, and then right before I went for my first ever dive, before I certified. So once I had certified and I had done the dives,
Yeah.
after that, it became, how many people get to do this for a job on a daily basis? Take a
Right.
speedboat, go out in the middle of the ocean, the
Right.
water's warm like a bathtub, it's the Bahamas, jump in, swim
Yeah.
around with some sharks.
Yeah.
So it became this incredible adventure that all of us were on.
This is admirable. Many years ago in the history of Indian film industry, big heroes and heroines would not do this. They wouldn't take a chance, and they would use a dupe,
Yes.
somebody else to do it. But you had the guts, you wanted to learn it and you wanted to do it. Is this something because it was inculcated in you because your father was a pilot and you came from that background?
I definitely think it is. I've never had a stunt double. Anything that you've ever seen in the films that I've done, including in Partner, you have me, my introduction was that I'm falling off a window frame, from a height.
Right.
So, and even as a model, I've never used a stunt double. And I've done some pretty incredible things in my life.
Wow.
So for me, like I said, I grew up as a little bit of a tomboy. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. I've come quite a few years later after both my older sisters. And I think the reason that I came is because, my nani's Tauji had said, "Nahi, is baar ladka hoga, ab try karo." So they, unfortunately for them, didn't get a boy. They were very fortunately got a girl. But I kind of grew up just like the son that they never had. And that's always been the way that I've been.
That's fantastic. You just mentioned that, you're more like a tomboy. I want to show you a little segment where you did a tomboyish little role, but it shows how versatile you are. Okay, let's watch that. Welcome to New York.
Yes.
That was more recent.
Welcome to New York was really, for me, an opportunity. We have a wonderful company in India called Whiscraft that does this incredible IFA Awards, sort of celebrations.
You were their host on IFA Awards at least 5 times. Oh, 6 times. Okay.
And again, the three of us, which is Baman Irani, Ritesh and myself, we've hosted a number of those IFAs together.
Right.
We have a wonderful, relationship.
Right.
And so when Whiscraft was producing Welcome to New York, so when they came in and they said, Lara, we want to bring those characters back, and we just want you guys to be part of it because this is a film that we're producing. It's based on an award ceremony, whatever. It was done purely for the love of friendship and and just being part of something that we've done, and has been very special as in my career as hosting all of those IFAs.
Smile, everyone.
Beecham House with Gurinder Chadha
Yes.
is another good series.
Yes. It's actually the first time that I've actually done anything in English. And Gurinder is a good friend of mine. And the character of Begum Samru that I play in Beecham House was a character that Gurinder actually added on after the entire series was written because she wanted to introduce some true life characters that actually existed in the late 1700s in Mughal era. And the show was based on John Beecham, who was a soldier from the British East India Company who had left the British East India Company, who now was trying to be a trader in India. But it was set around the time of the decline of the Mughal Empire and the colonization by the British sort of Raj. And Begum Samru, as people know, is an incredible character.
Eyes have rested on the only English rose.
A lot of people would say one of the most beautiful women in the world, but in your case, you proved you were the most beautiful woman in the world. So you decided to very logically launch your own beauty line product. I think it's called Arias.
Arias is what you would call a semi-palindrome. So palindrome is obviously a word that, if spelt backwards and forwards, means the same thing. Arias is very simply my daughter Saira's name spelt backwards.
Oh, really? Wow. I see.
So it's just my way of ensuring that I keep her close to me regardless of what I do.
Wow.
And I hope at some point of time, if I am successful with it as a businesswoman, then this is a little bit of a legacy that I leave behind for my daughter. Inshallah, if she ever wants to take it over.
Well, that's wonderful.
But yes, I've been actually, I was also having this conversation today earlier, when we were coming over to the studio. So I've obviously been in the, in show business for so long that I've had the opportunity, I use my face pretty much on a daily basis. So 25 years of experience cannot be disregarded, and I look at myself in the mirror pretty much every single day, very, very minutely. And I'm in my 40s now, and I've spent therefore 3 decades almost now coming into the business.
You did analyze, I remember in one of your earlier speeches, where you did say there may be great brands out of Paris, but frankly, they were made more for the white Anglo-Saxon skin.
Yes.
But whereas with the pigmentation and the difference in India with the sun and the way
damage,
so you designed something that was much more suitable for the South Asian population.
Yes. This is what I found, that in India, because you have all these, multi sort of national brands that have come in, these big, huge, conglomerates that bring in.
Because it's a huge market.
It's a huge market. It's a difficult market, but the pricing is also key. So a lot of times, firstly, most Indian women are not educated about having a consistent good skincare regime. And I've recently heard a saying which I thought was brilliant, and I love it, which says nothing looks as good on you in your 50s as sunscreen does in your 20s.
Wow.
And that is key, because a lot of times, especially women in India, aren't aware of that. Secondly, if you go out there and you're buying a jar of cream that's costing you in India 3,000, 4,000 rupees, for an average lady, even if she's a working woman, that's a lot of money.
Exactly.
So you use it so sparingly that firstly, you end up keeping that jar and making it last for as long as possible. Secondly, you use so little of it that it's definitely not going to do what it's made, it's created to do. So there was a massive thing where women, I felt, did not have that really effective quality skincare, but that was affordable. So the key with Arias was to make sure, our price points are extremely affordable, and most of our ingredients come in from the best labs in the world. So we have ingredients that come in from France, from Korea, from Japan. Also, a lot of the ingredients that are homegrown in India, because I wanted sustainability. I obviously wanted to be able to grow, into that market.
Right.
And all our manufacturing happens in India. So we're very excited. Right now, we're available extensively online on Amazon and Nykaa and Essentials World. We're also in stores. So slowly that distribution network will grow as well.
Wonderful. Hearty
Soon.
congratulations. And if there is anything we can do to help you out, it'll be
great.
for the asking. We'll be very
Thank
happy
you.
to be of assistance
Thank
to
you
you.
very much.
Another big hit of yours was Housefull.
Yes.
Because this is now with Akshay Kumar and Deepika Padukone.
I think if I have to really count a friend in the industry, Akshay is, of course, he's the guide and he's the philosopher.
Right.
But if I have to count a friend, then that would 100% be Ritesh, and then another incredible actor, Baman.
Wow.
So they're two very, very special people to me in the industry.
Right.
But Housefull. Great script on paper.
Yeah.
The first time I was working with Sajid Nadiadwala as well as Sajid Khan. And went in for a narration with Sajid Khan. And he was laughing so hard when he was reading the script. Forget about what he was going to do when the movie, kind of happened. And like I said, by that point of time, I was pretty well established when it came to, doing kind of comedy films. Of course, Sajid needed somebody who would be able to perform that role, because it was a performance role.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible film. We were going to go to London. We were going to be on set, shooting for about almost 3 months.
Right.
And that film will also be very, very special to me, because it's also the time that Mahesh and I actually started dating each other.
Wonderful.
So my memories of shooting in London and being connected to Housefull are always connected to actually meeting my husband.
Yeah.
And then kind of that starting. But working with Deepika, she's a really lovely girl. She's extremely vibrant, and I would say that for her as well, she knew that I was coming in from a slightly more experienced, sort of where comedy was concerned and doing films like that. But I have to be very honest and say that I have never in my career encountered working with a contemporary, or another actress where there's been any kind of, bad sort of energy or vibes or that kind of competitive spirit.
Yeah.
And I genuinely believe that I have always in my life, I am and I always strive to be a woman's woman, and I've always feel that women need to lift each other up. There's enough cutthroatedness, there's enough competition. You really, in order to see women succeed, women really need to support other women.
Wow.
And so I've had an amazing, experience working with, and I've done so many films that have been multi-starrers that have had other actresses in it.
Right.
And it's always been a very positive, kind of environment on set. So Housefull was tremendous. I mean, we had that scene with the tiger,
Yes.
Prada.
Yeah.
Sajid would make us do the most ridiculous thing. So he would shoot a scene and he would say, okay, do it. Then he would say, okay, now do it over the top in your way. And we would be enacting this scene and we would hear him laughing behind the monitors.
Yeah.
And he would refuse to say cut because he was enjoying it so much. So we as actors were going on with it. But it's nice to also work, with directors that allow you to bring that kind of freedom of performance onto screen as well.
Right.
And Baman was playing my father, I was playing a Gujarati character.
Right.
It was immense amounts of fun.
What? He doesn't know we are.
You were just mentioning that that's the time that you met your husband.
Yes.
He is an international figure, well known all over the world, extraordinarily talented and a pride of India, and he's got a Padma Shri. But tell me about your first meeting with him. What was it that attracted you to him to start with?
So to be very honest, I was never a massive tennis sort of a fan. I would only watch tennis matches if Sampras or Agassi were playing. So they were my two favorite players. And if there was a match that they were playing in, then I would watch a tennis match. Otherwise, I never really watched one.
But he played a lot with Leander Paes.
He did.
Yeah.
And of course, they were the two stars of Indian tennis.
Right.
And so everybody knew them, of course.
Right.
But he never crossed my radar. I never ever thought of Mahesh Bhupathi.
Yeah.
And before I actually met him, Mahesh had a company called Global Sport that were doing sport and film talent management. And the CEO of his company had approached me asking if I would be interested in being represented by them for, all my endorsement and things, works like that. So I was actually signed with Global Sport for about 3 years.
Wonderful.
I knew it was owned by Mahesh, but I had never met him because my interaction would only ever be with the CEO of the company. And 3 years later, the CEO was kind of leaving. He wanted to, start competitive sort of a company. And, he said to me, I think it's only fair that we give Mahesh and myself an opportunity to allow the clients of ours to choose for themselves should they want to continue with Global Sport or move with the guy. And common sense would have said, I move with the guy because he was the one who was handling my work all these years, and I never met Mahesh Bhupathi in my life.
Right.
But that's how the first meeting ever happened. So, we kind of met under the circumstances of, okay, the company is going to change, and do you want to stay or leave? And I think for me, meeting Mahesh, it was very refreshing to meet somebody who was quite unlike anybody that I saw day in and day out for the last, 15 years of my career. And it's very, very difficult in life. I come from very humble beginnings, I've made everything in my life is been made on my own strengths, through my own steam, through my own hard work. And to meet somebody who comes from a similar background, who everything that they have achieved in their life has been a product of working extremely hard. And none of us have had any sort of godfathers in the business, and nothing came easy.
Right.
So to meet somebody who understood that work ethic.
Wonderful.
Was in him or his own self. He was, India's pride for the accomplishments that he had.
Right.
And Mahesh is a man of extremely few words, extremely few.
Really?
So we're a good balance because I can't stop talking and he doesn't stop. He doesn't talk at all. So it was very refreshing to meet somebody like that. And it wasn't, instant sort of, wow, whatever, sparks or sort of an explosion. It was something that really actually grew. It was a mutual respect and admiration for what each of us had accomplished in our lives. And understanding that we're both very family-oriented people. We're both low-key. I'm not at every filmy party. That's not my life. I'm actually quite a private person. I let whatever I've done speak for itself, but I don't go out of my way to sort of plug or promote myself. And Mahesh is that way as well. So I think for us, we were two people who found each other, who understood that family was very key. We wanted children, we wanted a life that we made that was sans the shusha, and the noise that goes around being a celebrity. And that worked.
That's fantastic. You've also been very socially conscious because, you developed actually a series to help prenatal, pregnancy women, to help them, and you came up with some prenatal education tapes, I believe.
Right after I won Miss Universe, I was approached by the United Nations Population Fund to be a Goodwill Ambassador for them, which is a role that I occupied for 14 years.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we did some incredible work on, gender equality, especially around the world, but with special focus, obviously, on the Indian subcontinent.
Right.
Women's reproductive rights issues. The things that we worked on were, of course, the issue of female infanticide in India.
Wow.
The UNFPA campaigned quite extensively for the PCP-NDT Act to be passed in India, which then prohibits the sex of the fetus from being, sort of revealed before the birth. So these were things, I did a lot of work at grassroots level with the UNFPA. And this was in my early 20s, so it really gave me an understanding of an India that we live in a blurb, I honestly feel. When we live in these big metro cities, we live in a little bubble. We don't know what really goes on in the rest, what real India is about. And so I had an opportunity quite early in my life to really see that from a grassroots level, and to see the kind of change that could be implemented and what needed to be done to bring that change around. So I worked also quite extensively on the human trafficking sort of campaigns that were being placed that were running at that point of time. And again, I just feel that you're very blessed and fortunate to be in a position, and that position needs to be utilized. I also think one of my greatest blessings is the gift of the gab. That's something that I've been, it's really is a blessing to be bestowed with, and it gives me an opportunity to be a voice to a million faceless women around my own country that really don't have that opportunity. And you can bet your life that I'm going to take every chance that I get to, to really get all that I can out of it. So it is a privilege and an incredible responsibility to be able to give back. And I don't take it lightly. So also when you were talking about the prenatal, I just found that when I got pregnant in India, there were a lot of yoga kind of workouts and things like that women could do, but they were all by foreigners. They were all imported, sort of workout systems in place. So there was nothing that was homegrown. There was nothing that was in place that told pregnant women that they could still continue to have some form of exercise through all 3 trimesters of their pregnancy. So I found a gap in the market and I filled it. I've been a yoga practitioner for over 20 years.
Wow. Wow.
And I was very happy and very proud to be able to do that. And I love hearing back from women who've used it through their pregnancies and, had normal deliveries, healthy babies.
Bless yourself and gently begin to repeat the mantra.
Well, again, I have to comment on something that you just said now, that you have the gift of the gab. You're being too modest. I would never, so easily dispense that. I think you are extraordinarily brilliant and eloquent in your communication.
Thank you.
And I think you're one of the most sincere people I've come across. You've got tremendous substance, and I think, I've got the greatest respect for you. In fact, I didn't know you that well, but I've even got greater respect now after interacting with you even for a while. You are both a very highly dignified power couple, let's put it that way. When both of you are so successful in 2 parallel fields, in terms of your time frame and your being busy, how do you work your family life?
So we obviously work very hard at it. And I think for us, before we got married, we didn't get married as spring chickens. I was in my 30s, as was Mahesh, he was in his mid-30s. And obviously he was coming where he had already had a marriage that hadn't worked out, for him. So both of us, when we decided to get married, we knew that was something that we definitely wanted. And we also therefore discussed the kind of marriage we wanted, and if we had children, the kind of parents we wanted to be. And I think we were very, very clear that if there was a child, which for us happened very quickly into our marriage, that we would ensure that one parent was always on hand with the child. So we never wanted a child to be raised by our family or our extended family or by nannies and any kind of help that we could afford. And I think that was the best decision that both of us ever made. So our daughter Saira, who's 7 years old now, has always had one of us. So in fact, I'm here, being able to do this, and Mahesh is holding down the fort. She's got her exams in 2 weeks' time, so he's making sure she gets all her padhai done. And I have to give him credit. He really is an amazing father. And I find that in India, a lot of times the fathers are not really hands-on. It's the mothers who do everything, and that's the way it is within the community as well. But maybe my dad has been such a hands-on father that I didn't know any better. So I never gave Mahesh, I never cut him any slack, So for him, ever since the day she was born, he's been changing diapers, he can do the feeds, he gives her a bath, he, makes sure that her teeth are brushed, she's in bed, homework is done. And it's an immense asset, honestly, to know that I can go out into the world and do things that I need to do, and she's absolutely secure and fine, and they have an incredible relationship as father and daughter, as you can imagine.
Right.
And it's fantastic.
It actually showed even in your acting, because there was a brilliant scene in which you played a single mother, and your son, Rohan, I think the name of the child at that time, the character, you had a beautiful dialogue, a scene there. I want you to watch that with Salman Khan, you and the child.
तुम्हारे लिए कोई नहीं है, लेकिन मेरे लिए वो मेरी पूरी जिंदगी है, okay? He's my whole life.
Wonderful. What can people expect in the next, little while from the great Lara Dutta?
Well, I have a lot on my plate. So obviously a couple of years ago, apart from being an actor, I turned producer. I produced a film called Chalo Dilli that starred Vinay Pathak and myself in it.
और मैं अपनी जिंदगी अपने तरीके से जी सकती हूँ, हाँ भाई साहब.
It did really well for us, even as producers. So we're building from there. And this year we've got quite a lot on our plate. We're doing content development and creation for international digital platforms. We're also doing a film back again in India. So there's quite a bit on the production front of things. I'm just going to be starting, as soon as I leave and go back from here, I'm starting a new series, which is also a digital series.
Wow.
I'm playing a cop for the first time in my career.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful.
So I start that soon. And then, of course, it's taking, building a rise from where it is and expanding from there as well. So there's quite a lot.
So I wouldn't ask you what you do in your spare time.
What is that?
Lara, this is the first time you're coming to visit us here at ATN, and you've seen a little bit of what we do here.
I have to honestly say, you know, sometimes when you're coming in, you don't know what to expect. And I have to genuinely really say that I've been blown away by what I've witnessed here today. I can see from your side, Shan, a lifetime's commitment and passion to really building something that is world class. You know, you can sense it as you're walking through the corridors of this place. You can sense that commitment. You can see that I think your lifeblood has gone into this for you and Vijaya. And it's, I think that is what any individual can really ever finally, at the end of the day, when you lay your head down, look back and say that your life counted. And I definitely think that what you're doing here today will count not just to yourself, but for generations to come, to the industry, to the business too. I mean, you know, it's overwhelming really to see how amazing it is. And I'm very, very blessed and very thankful to be this minutely small part of it. Thank you for having me.
You've made our day, and you know, both Jaya and myself, from the bottom of our heart, we want to thank
Thank
you
you.
again for those kind words. Well, God bless you, and again, I wish you all the best in all these undertakings that you're doing.
Thank you very
and I'm pretty confident that whatever you touch will turn to gold, and you'll come out in flying colors.
Thank you.